In a tense and somewhat uncomfortable exchange at the White House, Vice President JDVance and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer found themselves at odds over the state of free speech in the United Kingdom and broader Europe. The moment, which unfolded during an Oval Office meeting with President Donald Trump, highlighted an ongoing debate over the boundaries of free expression and the role of misinformation laws in modern democracies. The interaction stemmed from remarks Vance made earlier this month at the Munich Security Conference, where he expressed concerns that free speech was in retreat in Europe. His comments drew significant attention, with some European leaders defending their approaches to regulating harmful speech, while critics argued such policies were veering into censorship. Vance's initial criticism of European free speech policies during the Munich Security Conference, Vance had been vocal about what he saw as troubling trends in Europe regarding free speech. He asserted that entrenched political and bureaucratic interests were using terms like misinformation and disinformation as tools to suppress alternative viewpoints. To many of us on the other side of the Atlantic, it looks more and more like old entrenched interests, hiding behind ugly Soviet-era words like misinformation and disinformation, who simply don't like the idea that somebody with an alternative viewpoint might express a different opinion, or, God forbid, vote a different way, or even worse, win an election. Vance said at the time. His remarks were widely reported and sparked debates in both the US and Europe, particularly in the UK, where some officials viewed his statements as an unwarranted critique of British policies. The Oval Office exchange fast forward to Thursday, when Starmer met with Trump and members of the administration at the White House. The meeting was meant to focus on trade, security, and transatlantic relations, but Vance's previous remarks resurfaced in the conversation, making for a somewhat awkward moment. Vance, standing by his comments from Munich, reiterated his concerns about European policies affecting free speech. I said what I said, which is that we do have, of course, a special relationship with our friends in the UK and also with some of our European allies, Vance remarked. But we also know that there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British. Of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them, he added, but it also affects American technology companies, and by extension, American citizens. So, that is something that we'll talk about today at lunch. As Vance finished his statement, Starmer, who was seated just a few feet away next to Trump, quickly interjected, signaling his disagreement with the Vice President's characterization of the UK's free speech environment. We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time, the Labour Party leader said firmly. Starmer continued, addressing concerns about British policies affecting American companies. Certainly, we wouldn't want to reach across and regulate US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right, he told Vance. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm really proud of that. Our history there, the interaction underscored the broader tensions between differing philosophies on how best to protect free expression, while also combating harmful misinformation and hate speech. The case that sparked controversy. At the Munich Security Conference, Vance had referenced a specific case from the UK that he found particularly alarming. He cited the example of a British Army veteran who was convicted for breaching a safe zone around an abortion clinic. The veteran had been silently praying outside the clinic, a fact that Vance pointed to as an infringement on basic freedoms, the enforcement of buffer zones around abortion clinics. has been a contentious issue in the UK. Supporters argue that such zones protect vulnerable individuals from intimidation and harassment, while critics claim they impose unconstitutional restrictions on peaceful protest and religious expression. Vance went further, alleging that the Scottish government had taken things to an extreme by warning people against private prayer within their own homes. This claim sparked heated debate, with UK officials pushing back against the assertion. Broader implications for US-UK relations. While the exchange between Vance and Starmer was notable for its directness, it also highlighted deeper ideological differences between the current US administration and its closest Under European Trump's leadership. The US has taken a more absolutist stance on free speech, often resisting regulatory measures aimed at curbing misinformation, hate speech, and online harassment. Conversely, European governments, including the UK, have sought to implement stricter controls in response to rising concerns about the spread of harmful content online. The debate over free speech is not merely academic. It has significant implications for tech policy, international trade, and diplomatic relations. American technology companies, such as social media giants, operate in multiple jurisdictions and must navigate differing legal frameworks on content regulation. Vance's remarks suggested that the US government is increasingly concerned that European policies could have a chilling effect on free expression, even beyond their borders. Political reactions and media response following the Oval Office meeting, media outlets on both sides of the Atlantic quickly picked up on the exchange. Conservative commentators in the US largely backed Vance's position, arguing that Europe's approach to misinformation laws sets a dangerous precedent. Some pointed to instances in which individuals in the UK have faced legal consequences for online speech that would be protected under the First Amendment in the US. On the other hand, many British media outlets and political figures defended Starmer's stance, asserting that the UK has a strong tradition of free speech balanced by responsibilities to prevent harm. Supporters of Starmer also noted that the UK's approach is not unique, as many European countries have enacted similar measures. The future of the debate. As the Biden administration continues to navigate its relationship with European allies, the issue of free speech is likely to remain a contentious topic. The fundamental philosophical divide between the US and Europe on the balance between freedom and regulation suggests that these debates will persist. For Vance, the Oval Office exchange served to reinforce his position as a staunch advocate for unregulated free speech. His comments will likely resonate with a segment of the American electorate that views efforts to combat misinformation as veiled attempts at censorship. For Starmer, the moment was an opportunity to push back against what he likely saw as mischaracterizations of the UK's policies. His firm response signaled that Britain will not accept external critiques on its domestic approach to speech regulation without defending its long-standing traditions. As technology continues to reshape global communication, the balance between protecting speech and regulating harmful content will remain a central policy challenge. The recent exchange between Vance and Starmer is just one example of how these debates are playing out at the highest levels of government, with significant consequences for international relations and the future of free expression worldwide.